panelist John Stopchick. Now, you all know that the internet is a big and busy place. Knowing where and when to market your club can make all the difference between getting new members or not. This evening, our first panelist will be discussing some strategies he's learned over the years when marketing a Toastmasters club. Sharing his lessons on bite-sized marketing, please help me welcome John Stopchick. John?
Thank you, Kyle. I really appreciated your introduction today because it really segues into a large amount of what I'm going to be talking about. I almost thought about putting a little Y instead of an I in the word bite for bite-sized marketing, doing a little play on words, digital advertisement, but I didn't want to detract. I want to talk today about some small things you can do, some things that if you've ever attended a previous Nerd Masters meeting before, you may have learned, but putting it all together and taking it one step at a time. And I want that to be a continuous theme of this. I'm part of another club, BG's Toastmasters. And this club, I had the privilege of being the vice president of membership, the vice president of public relations. This afforded me the opportunity to see what works and what didn't work for our club. Today, I want to share some of those things I've learned with you here today. Before I get into websites, tools, screen sharing, all that fun stuff, I want to emphasize something that Kyle said initially, and that was setting your target audience. Who do you want to advertise to? We're generally nerds. There's a couple of Luddites among us. There's a few folks who don't do tech but learn tech, and we've brought them up to speed, so on and so forth. But if you were to advertise for Nerd Masters, you'd think about places where you'd find nerd stuff, gaming stores, comic book places, perhaps miniature collectible stores, things you could pin up on the wall. I always immediately think of locations first because I think about where would I go as a nerd if I wanted to find a club to do public speaking. Possibly conventions. I got to give a shout out to Kyle for that. Absolutely a great suggestion. Yeah, exactly. You need to know your target audience first, foremost, and out of the gate. If you don't have that, you're going to fail. Full stop. I'm going to speak to my club, BG's Toastmasters, for a moment. BG's Toastmasters is a really well-rounded club. It has a simple set of values. We want to have fun, we want to be courageous, and we want to be honest. So a great public speaking club for learning how to speak appropriately and really getting a lot of the fundamentals down. I don't want to misspeak about the club because there's a few of my fellow co-members here today. Once you've got your target audience, in the case of BG's Toastmasters, in my example here, you want people who want to learn, who are ravenous to learn about public speaking, and perhaps maybe want to supplement their skills for a business. Perhaps want to have some fun in a public speaking club and socialize a little bit. So knowing those things, as the VP of PR, I ended up having to take that and run with it. We also talked in the club first about goals. What is the goals for membership? Are we trying to get a certain number of people? Are we trying to, as I said before initially with the target audience, are we trying to target a broader audience than we usually do? Are we trying to reach inside our own bubbles and pull people in? Or are we trying to reach outside of our comfort bubble and bring people who are diverse and different and out there? Depending on what your club's whole premise is, this can change. So again, I'm going to keep it simple. People interested in public speaking, people who are voracious for learning, people who want to have fun. Those are the three metrics I started with BG's. The first things, once you establish those, are having some tools available. You want to have a bit.ly link to your club's website. Not just your club's website URL, but a bit.ly link or some sort of shortened URL link. You can sign up at bit.ly.com. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. Please do let me know if you don't see what I'm talking to, because I'd feel horrible if I was sharing something and didn't really realize I wasn't sharing it. Bit.ly is a very simple website. And for demonstration purposes, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to take my bit.ly login URL. You can actually, in here for free, for the first, I think, 20 links, create a link. As you can see here, it's offering to create a link. I'm going to minimize you folks, if it lets me. There we go. I can just enter the long URL. It's going to ask me about a bunch of stuff here, parameters I can add. I don't care about that stuff. And when I create it, there it is. This link will take me right back to this exact bit.ly page that I'm on. So if I go to paste here, it already exists. Oh, did I not hit save? Oh, thank goodness it did it. I did not hit save, so I should have hit save there. But fortunately, bit.ly is smart enough to account for me. So it's that easy to create a bit.ly link. We're going to talk about that a little bit here as we move into the different elements. So having something like that, in my opinion, is key. You don't want a long, complicated URL. No one wants to type that out, especially in this fast-moving era of the youths. The second thing you want is some sort of survey tool, and you want these things ahead of time. That's why I'm emphasizing this before we even talk about social media. You want either SurveyMonkey or google.com/forms. I'm not going to go into how to use those things. There are plenty of other Nerdmasters videos from past meetings that have discussed how to use these tools. Sufficient to say you should have a survey form for two purposes. One, for inquiries, something for people to reach to and ask, how do I do this club? Is it for me? Maybe a couple of key questions. And then from the other side, after you've actually had a club experience with a new guest, you want that survey form to find out what they liked, what they didn't like, and how you can improve as a club or be more conducive, or possibly just be reminded to give recommendations for potential other clubs. Because a Toastmaster that doesn't fit your club may in fact be a prospective Toastmaster for another club. It's another good reason to get together and learn the different Toastmaster clubs in your district, I would argue. So once you have those two things, now we can start talking about Twitter, about Facebook, about LinkedIn. I'm not going to go into the target audience stuff because we just talked about that. You know who you want to reach out to. Again, I'm speaking to BGs. When I was doing the public relations for this club, the first thing I thought was fun. Okay, that's pretty broad. Facebook, we'll put it on the list. Then I thought people who want to learn to public speak, be leaders. LinkedIn. LinkedIn seems like an obvious social media tool for those type of individuals. Put it on the list. And then I started to think, well, what else can we go to? What other websites? And this is where things get interesting. With BG's, with my Toastmasters Club, I'm not sure if I wanted to do these, but for something like Nerdmasters, maybe you want to consider TikTok. Maybe you want to consider Instagram. You say to me, well, why? Those things are like 30-second applications. You watch a video, you scroll through them, and it's for people who have no attention span. That's a bit judgmental, so I'm not going to actually say that that's true. The truth is that we do bite-sized content in Toastmasters. We pride ourselves on it. Our impromptu speaking table topics, what is that but bite-sized content that we curate for ourselves? So if you want to send out a particularly funny table topics response, TikTok and Instagram are the perfect place for that. And because they're bite-sized applications, you're going to have your tiny bit.ly link already set up below your video. And when someone laughs their head off, they click that link, they're taken to a sign-up form, you've hooked them. You've got something. There are other websites to consider. Sites like meetup.com and Eventbrite, as Kyle had mentioned, meetup.com is something that some people use. Those sites are incredibly powerful. They serve multiple purposes. First and foremost, scheduling your meetings. Beyond scheduling your meetings, though, Eventbrite and Meetup, this is a secret. Did you know that Google spiders those websites? In other words, it goes through, takes that information, and adds it to the Google Events data set. So when someone searches something on Google, such as BG's Toastmasters meetings, they'll find your Eventbrite page either 2 or 3 links down, or if they're looking in Google Events, they'll find that front and center. Use event scheduling resources. Even if you're not going to actually engage with those tools on your own time, or you're not going to use them for the club internally, having the club meeting reminder on those websites means that they will be trickling into Google, into their event calendars. So suddenly if you search Tacoma events, you get the BG's Toastmasters Club, you get the Nerdmasters Club, you get all of these different clubs on this website. Continuing with that, think about your local community event calendars. There are tons of websites of this sort but the big ones are your local public city websites with event calendars, places where you find things like farmers markets or local community events. What is Toastmasters but a local community event? I'm only giving these event groups lip service. I only use them sporadically because with Toastmasters, I curate to with BGs, I curated to a specific group. And like I said, LinkedIn and Facebook. You have all of this stuff. You have these links, you have these forms, you've shortened the links to these forms. That also makes something else really easy. I will get to your questions at the end, just as a heads up. With, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. With these social websites, you've got these tools, you've got these links. Suddenly, you can start thinking about the content. The best kind of content is the content that catches a person's eye. If you can take a piece of video, a snippet of video with something wacky or fun or engaging or something that gives a person pause, that's the kind of thing to post on Facebook and Twitter. You can post the perfect phrased turn of phrase onto a social media website. I would argue your best bet is to use video. Take your video, turn it into a snippet, and put it on there. You hear someone saying, "We flew the Enterprise together in our recent meeting," that's going to make someone stop scrolling for a moment, especially with all the doom scrolling they're doing. If they stop and see something awesome like a Star Trek reference, at least me, I'll stop and read that and actually give it my attention proper, as opposed to ignoring all the craziness of the news of the world. So that's one easy way to curate content. The boilerplate is, if you can't do that, have a 30-second elevator speech, a spiel. You don't want a big giant paragraph. People aren't going to read it. Do you read big giant paragraphs on Facebook? Maybe you do. I don't. Don't judge me. It's Facebook. It's for scrolling. But that's the point. There are a lot of people like me out there who don't want to spend a bunch of time reading on Facebook. I read on my Kindle. I read my books behind me. I'm not going to read a novel on Facebook. And so if you provide a quick snippet of what your club's about, what you like, and something funny, you'll do a lot better. And the bit.ly link, I keep coming back to that, a quick, simple link, that's important. Now, with all that said, I want to give you something to think about. The reason I said short bit.ly link, you could put that on paper. The most effective two things for BGs where people came into our club were, first of all, Facebook, and then second of all, coffee shops. After doing all of this marketing, I did all of these sheets of paper, distributed them all over town. We got several new members just from people seeing those sheets of papers. And you can bet that having a short link, easy to enter into their phone, just typing it off the wall, goes way further. Now, there's a lot of stuff to talk about that I could go into. But my point is, keeping it short, sweet, simple, and using the tools in short and sweet and simple ways will go way further than exhausting yourself trying to craft the perfect narrative. At the end, again, follow up with your guests. Give them the survey link. Ask them, what do you need? What do you like? What didn't you like? Be brutally honest. You want your guests to be brutally honest. There's so much more, again, I could say, and someone else threw out their QR codes. I love QR codes. Use QR codes more than bit.ly links, people. Trust me. With all that said, I wish I could keep going, but I only have so much time. So I hope this has been somewhat informative and somewhat helpful. And thank you all so much for giving me your time today.
Game over.